I looked at the three trees. I could see them plainly, but my mind felt that they were concealing something which it could not grasp, as when an object is placed out of our reach so that our fingers, stretched out at arm's length, can only touch for a moment its outer surface without managing to take hold of anything. Then we rest for a little while before thrusting out our arm with renewed momentum and trying to reach an inch or two further. But if my mind was thus to collect itself, to gather momentum, I should have to be alone. What would I not have given to be able to draw aside as I used to do on those walks along the Guermantes way when I detached myself from my parents? I felt indeed that I ought to do so. I recognized that kind of pleasure which requires, it is true, a certain effort on the part of the mind, but in comparison with which the attractions of the indolence which inclines us to renounce that pleasure seem very slight. That pleasure, the object of which I could only dimly feel, which I must create for myself, I experienced only on rare occasions. But on each of these it seemed to me that the things that had happened in the meantime were of little importance, and that in attaching myself to the reality of that pleasure alone could I at length begin to lead a true life. I put my hand for a moment across my eyes, so as to be able to shut them without Madame de Villeparisis noticing. I sat there thinking of nothing. Then, with my thoughts collected, compressed and strengthened, I sprang further forward in the direction of the trees, or rather in that inner direction at the end of which I could see them inside myself. I felt again behind them the same object, known to me and yet vague, which I could not bring nearer. And yet all three of them, as the carriage moved on, I could see coming towards me. Where had I looked at them before? There was no place near Cambrai where an avenue opened off the road like that, nor was there room for the sight which they recalled to me in the scenery of the place in Germany where I had gone one year with my grandmother to take the waters. Was I to suppose, then, that they came from years already so remote in my life that the landscape which surrounded them had been entirely obliterated from my memory, and that, like the pages which, with a sudden thrill, we recognize in a book that we imagined we had never read, they alone survived from the forgotten book of my earliest childhood? Were they not rather to be numbered among those dream landscapes, always the same, at least for me, in whom their strange aspect was only the objectivation in my sleeping mind of the effort I made while awake either to penetrate the mystery of a place beneath the outward appearance of which I was dimly conscious of there being something more, and had so often happened to me on the Guermantes way, or to try to put mystery back into a place which I had longed to know, and which, from the day when I had come to know it, had seemed to me to be wholly superficial, like Balbec? Interrupted. Or were they merely an image freshly extracted from a dream of the night before, but already so worn, so faded, that it seemed to me to come from somewhere far more distant? Or had I indeed never seen them before, and did they conceal beneath their surface, like certain trees on tufts of grass that I had seen beside the Guermantes way, a meaning as obscure, as hard to grasp as is a distant past, so that, whereas they were inviting me to probe a new thought, I imagined that I had to identify an old memory? Or again, were they concealing no hidden thought? And was it simply visual fatigue that made me see them double in time, as one sometimes sees double in space? I could not tell. And meanwhile they were coming towards me, perhaps some fabulous apparition, a ring of witches or of Norns who would propound their oracles to me. I chose rather to believe that they were phantoms of the past, dear companions of my childhood, vanished friends who were invoking our common memories. Like ghosts, they seemed to be appealing to me to take them with me, to bring them back to life. In their simple and passionate gesticulation, I could discern the helpless anguish of a beloved person who has lost the power of speech and feels that he will never be able to say to us what he wishes to say, and we can never guess. Presently, at a crossroads, the carriage left them. It was bearing me away from what alone I believed to be true, what would have made me truly happy. It was like my life. I watched the trees gradually recede, waving their despairing arms, seeming to say to me, "What you failed to learn from us today, you will never know. If you allow us to drop back into the hollow of this road from which we sought to raise ourselves up to you, a whole part of yourself which we were bringing to you will vanish forever into thin air." And indeed, if, in the course of time, I did discover the kind of pleasure and disquiet which I had just felt once again, and if one evening, too late, but then for all time, I fastened myself to it, of those trees themselves I was never to know what they had been trying to give me, nor where else I had seen them. And when, the road having forked and the carriage with it, I turned my back on them and ceased to see them, while Madame de Villeparisis asked me what I was dreaming about, I was as wretched as if I had just lost a friend, had died myself, had broken faith with the dead, or repudiated a God.